Welcome to Selling and Sales Management, MBA 543, St. Francis University. I am Adam Conrad, your instructor, and we're going to get started with Chapter 1, Developing a Personal Selling Philosophy. So learning objectives for Chapter 1 involved define personal selling and describing 3 prescriptions of a personal selling philosophy. We're going to describe the emergence of relationship selling in the age of information and how things have really changed over the last number of years, and discuss how a career in selling can be really rewarding. And let me go ahead and go back here to the PowerPoint and make sure we got the right one going here. Okay. And we're going to discuss different employment settings in selling today, how personal selling skills have become one of the master skills needed in success in the information age. And in particular, if you ever decide to start your own company, how selling skills are so critical in starting your own company. And the major sources of sales training that are available. So a little bit about the definition of personal selling. So this is when a company representative, or if it's your own company, interacts directly with prospective customers or actual customers out there. So in the business, we'll talk about this later in the course. Many companies will separate their sales force into what we'll call hunters and farmers. And so you actually have people that go out and get new business versus people that are actually servicing existing clients. So personal selling philosophy has 3 prescriptions. You adopt a marketing concept, you value personal selling, and you become a problem solver or partner. The strategic and a consultative selling model basically has you, it's a little figure here that talks about developing a personal selling philosophy and gives you some insight into actually putting together your own personal selling model. So there's a big change in the industrial economy where if you were selling up through 1950 or 1960, it was different. It was a very different environment for selling because literally you could go out and rep a product. A lot of things were actually hard products. They were actual equipment. It wasn't focused as much on services. So a lot of changes in selling because you're actually selling hard goods up through a certain time. Now, a lot of the goods you're selling, a lot of the things you're selling are actually services that are out there. Could be information technology, could be databases, could be software, and a lot of outsourcing services. So quite a bit different in terms of how the types of products that are out there, and quite a bit of difference in the types of clients you're calling on. Instead of hard goods and manufacturing, calling on manufacturing companies to help them build widgets faster with different types of equipment. Now you're talking about information technology and selling things that actually help them be more successful in terms of their IT needs. So again, major advances in information technology have really changed selling, and it certainly has changed the environment in which salespeople work. Your information is one of your most important assets, but customer relationships remain a key ingredient to success in selling. So essentially with all selling, it's all about creating and adding value. So your value proposition and what you're offering to the clients and how they make use of your product or service and the value and the benefits that they receive from it are all remain critical components of sales. How about some careers in selling? Sales careers run the gambit. They can be very simple, I'll call it almost clerking type sales arrangements where you're selling in maybe more of a retail environment, all the way through very exceptional consultative selling processes. Imagine the array of selling from retail all the way through selling jumbo jet airliners, for example, where one unit is hundreds of millions of dollars. So there's quite an array of sales and quite an array of opportunities out there. But keep in mind that, and I always look at this as a sales guy, as a salesperson, is somebody sold this. So no matter what product or service you're using, somebody at some point work with a prospective customer, maybe the provider of the service you're using, to purchase that product. I mean, think about the airliner you fly on when you go on vacation. Somebody sold that airliner to the airline. And everything in between. So when you go to an airport, all the chairs that are sold, all of the, from the furniture and the equipment to the engineering and the building of the building, everything gets sold. So one of the things that's really interesting about a sales career is that in many sales careers, you have an extreme latitude in terms of the activities that you do and the time in which you perform them. So you have a lot of freedom to manage your own time and activities. Not the least of which, one of the major benefits of selling is that typically salespeople can earn above average incomes. This often comes to the chagrin of folks that, it's interesting, there's salespeople that certainly can make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars per year in selling. And you contrast that to folks that may have spent 10 or 12 years getting an advanced degree in something that don't earn anywhere near that. So a lot of folks look at that and say there's the real opportunity in sales. They also talk about the above average psychic income. So what we're talking about here is the fact that not only do you get to set your own schedule and you get to work a lot of times in your own parameters, you get to decide where you're going to be, when you're going to be, to a large degree, I mean not all the time, that you actually have a huge amount of esteem in the fact that you get to kind of work your own schedule. Nothing could be more the case in the business, one of the businesses I work in, which is real estate. So real estate salespeople, which I'll use frequently as an example in this course, real estate salespeople simply have the ability, and I often call it a lifestyle sales career, simply have the ability to decide when and where they're going to work and how much. And of course, a lot of times that equals exactly how much they're going to be able to make. Also, the opportunity for advancement. So there's opportunity for advancement if you want to move into sales management, you want to move into other product lines. We often talk about the Super Bowl of selling, which is that you can take a sales career and move through different types of sales for different types of products and services, and actually have an increasing income and increasing latitude in terms of your own schedule as you move up into different product lines and into different services where you can actually advance. And that doesn't mean just get a different manager job or whatnot. It really comes down to something like something like the ability to work in an industry like software, or into hard goods like we talked about, selling something like airliners, where you actually get to work on more in different types of sales careers, not just in terms of just getting a different title or a different job, is really the ability to sell different types of products. So before I was in the real estate business, I was actually in the software business, and I used to refer to that as a Super Bowl of selling. And you're selling software to hospitals, and it's millions of dollars. That's something that is a very complex sale process, and one that you don't start your career with. It's one that you certainly work your way into. So the other big advantage is not just for women, opportunities in the business for women and for people of all walks of life. I actually will also say that not only just for women, but for folks that may have challenges or disabilities, there's often opportunities. I actually had a gal work with me in one company who was homebound. She was able to make telephone calls and work from home, but she was not able to leave her house. She was actually wheelchair bound. So she was actually able to have a very striking career in sales and sales support based on the fact that she was able to actually work a computer, work the phone, and be very successful with that. So not just, we have all different types of folks can really be successful in the real estate business, or not just real estate business, but in the business of selling. How salespeople spend their time. Interestingly, when you look at this graph, and you have access to all these slides in the resources, face-to-face selling time is indicated at 26%, sales prep at 16%, administrative tasks at 26%, and travel and waiting at 32%. So a lot of time is spent in sales management. I spend a lot of time as a sales manager looking at opportunities to try to reduce the amount of other tasks that a salesperson would have to perform so that they could get more face-to-face selling time. Because if you could increase that 26% and take it to 35%, you're actually moving that almost 30%, 33% more face-to-face selling time, which actually makes your people typically more productive. So there's all types of activities that work on trying to create more selling time and to offload like administrative tasks. I mean, let's take those and let's hand those off to somebody else so that we can actually be more successful. So during the class, I'll actually talk about things that I've done in the past to actually increase decrease non-selling time to increase face-to-face selling time. So some of the titles used in selling today, and I didn't have the graphic up here for you, so let me give you a graphic, and there's talks about the different face-to-face selling, sales prep, and so on. Titles used in selling today: account executive, account representative, account manager, relationship manager, district rep, marketing partner, regional account manager, key accounts manager, strategic accounts manager. So all different types. There's actually more of these. I can tell you that some of these will often, depending on the company, will designate what we call hunters and farmers. So some folks, when you look at these, like an account executive might indicate that that person is working only with existing clients. Or an account manager only working with existing clients. Sometimes you'll see a regional account manager or a key accounts manager. When I look at key accounts manager, I can almost tell you, or strategic accounts manager, I can almost tell you that those types of account managers oftentimes are hunters. They're out getting new accounts. But in other companies I've been in, they would refer to their key accounts manager as their top customers or their most strategic customers. So it just really depends when you're working in a company to try to identify the role and relationship. Are they out getting new business, the salespeople, or are they serving existing clients? I can also tell you from most companies that I've worked with or managed the sales team, the folks that are working with existing clients and upselling or working with them and managing that client experience often doesn't pay near as well as folks that go out and get new business. And there's actually some thoughts on why that might or should be reversed. In terms of retention and maybe retaining clients as opposed to going out and just getting new ones. So some titles used in selling today. We have, again, more of these: sales consultants, business development representative, sales associate, marketing rep, territory manager, channel partner, national accounts, global accounts, and account development representative. So you can look at that again and see, based on my examples, that the account development representative, probably somebody who's going out and getting new business. Channel partner, that's worth talking about for a moment. That's often maybe another company that's a reseller or selling the products, and so they're managing the sales force and managing the sales experience, and you're not actually managing that. So you have your product, and rather than your own sales force selling it, or maybe in conjunction with your own sales force selling it, you have a channel partner who's actually out there selling it as well. And then we'll talk about at some point channel conflict, where they're actually out trying to sell to your same clients or to the same prospects, which is interesting. Salesforce compensation. I can tell you that these numbers that I'm seeing here are actually from the book are actually low from what I've seen in the business. It was not uncommon for me in some of the companies that I worked to hire salespeople that had salaries that started at the top performers of strategic account managers. So you might start at $150,000 and be on target, or what we call OTE, on target earnings, at $300,000 to $400,000. So obviously, in order to return those types of dollars, you're going to be needing to add some real profitability to the company's bottom line. So you're not going to sell $300,000 or $400,000 worth of goods or services for the year to get that kind of income. You're probably going to be selling, my estimate, probably in the $5 to $6 million or more of very profitable goods in order to get to those kind of earnings levels. But if you look at the graph and chart, there is real opportunities to make really good incomes in a sales career. And again, you want to double check some of these. There's been a shift in recent years towards reducing pay for top performers and reducing pay for salespeople. Companies are trying to ratchet this back because obviously these are big numbers. but these are really relevant in terms of what types of opportunities are out there. So some employment settings in sales today, inside versus outside sales. Again, this is getting more into opportunities that are inside selling based on working out of the employer's location. So you may, inside sales, you may be working out of a call center, you may be working out of an office, clients might be coming to you, you may never travel to clients. I actually managed the sales force for a software company, and it was a completely online hosted software product. And the price point that we were selling it at was pretty aggressive. So what that meant was our business model, our sales model meant that we couldn't send salespeople out on site to do presentations. We arranged all the presentations to be done online using a computer. I need to catch up some of my slides here. Here's the slide on Salesforce compensation. I'm glad you're following along at home. And inside versus outside salespeople. So one of the things you'll find is, that I found in that company is that while traditionally the salespeople would go out on site and actually do the presentations in person, what we found in this model is that it was not possible based on our revenue model and our expense model to actually deploy salespeople in the field. So we did presentations from our desktop, and the salespeople did them from their desktop, and they would often do 3 or 4 presentations a day. And I can tell you that in a traditional sales model for software, that it was unusual to be able to do 3 or 4 in a week. You typically travel on site and do one presentation, in Indianapolis, then you'd go do one in Fort Worth, Texas, then you'd go on and do one in Chicago. You kind of zigzag around and do presentations traveling each day to get to them. Whereas the inside salespeople had the ability to actually sell, and in this sales model, we actually sold software doing remote presentations. So that contrast to the outside salespeople, which I described, which was a model that was kind of moving away, where salespeople would actually go out in the field, set up and do a sales presentation at a client location, meet the people in person. Obviously, you can think about the pros and cons of both. You have more of a relationship with somebody when you're meeting them in person. You have an appointment, you're sitting down with them, talking with them, you can read their expressions. Very different than doing an online presentation. So there's a lot of adaptability, a lot of things you have to adapt in order to adjust to those different selling models. Okay, so selling through channel services. All right, so I mentioned channel services. I'll take a sip here. Channel services, this is where you have a service provider. So let's say, for example, we use something simple like QuickBooks. And I'm not sure that QuickBooks does it this way, but I'll just use it because it sounds like a familiar name. But something like QuickBooks, which has a software program that they sell, it's actually fairly inexpensive relative to other software products. And so QuickBooks has a direct selling model where they sell direct through Amazon, they sell direct to people. But QuickBooks also has a reseller program. So they actually have accountants and other folks that work with them that are consultants who will sell QuickBooks as part of the service that they're doing. So essentially what you have is a service provider or a software provider like QuickBooks that normally, that they actually in some cases will sell the product directly and will also have a channel that they'll sell it through. So instead of selling it direct, you could have, and you see here you have business-to-business channels. You could have a manufacturer selling through an industrial salesperson to an industrial customer. You could have a manufacturer who's selling to a distributor who then sells to the industrial customer. Or the manufacturer in the lower part of this actually has what they call a missionary salesperson, where somebody's going out directly to individual customers. So you take a manufacturer, somebody who's making, we'll say they're making equipment to make candy. We'll use the candy manufacturer as an example. So you may have a manufacturer who makes equipment that will make candy or make molds or wrappers to wrap candy. They may sell that directly to candy companies. So they would go directly to that industrial customer, or they may sell it to a distributor who distributes equipment that wraps candy in manufacturing, who then in turn uses the distributor salesperson to sell that industrial customer. So you can see how there could be multiple channels here. Again, generally speaking, if you're looking at compensation, the missionary salesperson is generally the person who's going to be the highest earner in those types of situations, whether it's the business-to-business channel up top or on the bottom. It's going to be the best earners. Selling through channels when you talk about consumer channels. So the manufacturer could sell directly to the consumer. They could sell, and again, I use my QuickBooks example, from the manufacturer to a trade salesperson to the retailer. Let me get the right slide up here. To the retailer, to the consumer, or from the manufacturer to the trade salesperson, to the distributor, to the trade salesperson, to the retailer, to the retail salesperson, to the consumer. So what happens when you have all of these different channels is each of the channels that you see listed here, every time there's a hop from the different channels, those things add cost. So obviously companies like the ability to sell direct to the consumer if they can, but sometimes it's not practical to sell direct to consumers for a variety of reasons, which we'll talk about. But if you're selling direct to the consumer, then you have to have support for that consumer. So like, the consumer may have questions, they may have problems with installation or use of the product. And so a lot of times companies will try to sell through other channels so that those people who sell it are now responsible for the end consumer. Obviously, each time we put somebody in between, a middleman, we'll call it, adds cost before it gets to the end product. But sometimes that's a necessary thing. You don't want, I'll use the example, heating and air conditioning. You don't want a consumer talking directly to the manufacturer about buying a new heating system for their home. They're going to need to talk to an HVAC company installer, so it may look more like the bottom, where the HVAC company, like we'll use Trane for example, has a trade salesperson who sells to the distributor, and then they sell to the HVAC company who then in turn sells to the consumer, because it's unlikely that a consumer is going to be able to figure out how to buy a heating and air conditioning system and install it in their home themselves. So they're going to need those channels in order to perform that. And that creates opportunity for salespeople along the way as well. Okay, so career opportunities in a service channel. So there's all different kinds of places that you can find work as a salesperson in looking at these different channels. And again, if you adopt the mindset that everybody sells something, or that everything that you touch actually got sold, it's a real interesting concept. One time I had a company that somebody at a recruiter was talking to me and asked me if I'd be interested in working with a company that actually sold advertising on hospital televisions. And you think about that for a second, you think, wow, there's actually somebody, so when somebody's watching a television in a hospital, there's a service provider that sits behind that's actually selling ads that get inserted into the television screens when you're in the hospital. And so somebody's selling that, and somebody's getting paid to be the channel partner or the person that's actually selling those ads. So when I see that hotel, motel, and convention services, it reminds me of that particular company. Telecommunication services. Landlines, probably not so much these days, right? But certainly cell phone, voice over IP, there's lots of opportunity, lots of traditional businesses out there still running on landlines, tons of opportunity, lots of companies out there doing voice over IP. Financial services, again, we have a lot of folks that are seeking financial services for investing and retirement. We do have baby boomers are flush with cash, and they have a lot of money to invest. And so a lot of folks are working in what we call FinServe, or financial services, to actually sell them products. Media sales, again, different types of media, better than others, and there's evolving things with media for online and so on. Notice real estate is popped in there. Real estate is a career opportunity. Insurance, business services, and business services encompasses quite a few things. There's a variety of things that are business services. Industrial salespeople. So if you have manufacturing, and again, not as much manufacturing in the United States as there used to be, but there's still a bunch. And so there's companies that make industrial goods, and somebody's got to go sell that. Sales engineer or applications engineer. So this gets into a little bit of more spec work, where you actually have people that are selling that do a lot of work on, okay, somebody needs a specific device or a specific tool, industrial tool. And so sales engineers will often figure that out from a manufacturing standpoint, but applications engineers probably more prevalent where you go in, you consult with a client, and they tell you, this is what I need software to do, and we can't find anything to do it. Can you build it? I actually have a son-in-law who actually does that. He works for a company. They actually go out and they build CRM systems for companies where they go out and they assess the needs and they do customer relationship management systems, which is a very popular field these days. And of course, field salespeople. So some of the career opportunities in consumer goods. There are still lots of opportunities in retail selling, not as many as there used to be. A lot of folks want to be able to buy direct. If you think about the Amazon experience and how folks now, the consumer does a lot of the work that salespeople used to do the work of. I mean, the consumer actually chooses the product themselves in many cases. They select it, they put it in their cart, which we're still using a shopping cart mentality, which is kind of funny when you think about the fact that folks aren't really using shopping carts except when they go to the grocery store. And then you go to the next step was, the client puts in all their own shipping and information on their address and about themselves. They put in their credit card. They actually do the settlement, invoicing, all of that. And so essentially the client does almost all the order entry and all the sorting and selecting process. So that changes up from the days when retail, you'd walk into a store and the sales rep writes all that up and fills all that out and processes your credit card and charging and all those types of things. So quite a bit of change. The graphic in the slide here shows a car, and there are companies now like Carvana, popular companies like Tesla, that actually let you order your car online. So you just order the car online, you select it, you put a deposit on it, and they will literally deliver the car to your home. So they've eliminated all of the process of the traditional dealership. So obviously if you're running a car dealership, you're watching this and they're trying to determine how do you fit in those types of environments. So lots of changes. The other thing I mentioned earlier is the customer relationship management systems that are out there. No matter what you're going to be doing in selling these days, you're probably going to be using some sort of CRM system. A CRM system can be simply a bunch of index cards. It can be a simple database on your laptop. It can be in the cloud. But the more powerful systems can do amazing things. And the one thing you're going to absolutely do, particularly if you're working in a sales force and you have a sales manager, is you're going to feed and work with and I say feed because you're going to be putting lots of information into the CRM system, the customer relationship management system. It's software that's going to record in one place all the information about a customer, their needs, their expectations. There's going to be notes that you're going to be putting in. And in my career as managing salespeople, I can tell you that I've used a variety of these systems. I've implemented them from scratch. I've used them. We've replaced them. Just depends on the different point of view from the company and how they were working best. Salesforce.com became a very popular system. It's not a very old company, probably at most 15 years old in my opinion, if I recall correctly. And you have a company who's at the top of the ladder in terms of implementing systems for salespeople. This lives in the cloud. So it's a completely web-based system that is used, you can use it on phones, you can use it on tablets and laptops, but the database in the system runs completely in the cloud. Notice these all have .com after them, so these really live, a lot of these live in the cloud. I've implemented a number of these programs, including Salesforce, NetSuite, Sales Logic, so I'm familiar with those. And companies will take a different, some companies will like these, not like these, some will take them out, some will replace them, some will adopt them. Interestingly, again, they all live in the cloud, or many of them live in the cloud. These are the websites for the products, but most of the software these days is actually cloud-based. So essentially what you have is a single point where people can, sales reps can log in, and sales management and leadership can log in from all over, or really from anywhere, and actually interact with the software and get access to the information. So a lot of these systems do live in the cloud, and in a sales career, you will absolutely be expected to work with the CRM system and utilize it to its fullest extent. So again, mentioned this earlier, the notion that folks spend a lot of time, 40% or more time in their selling careers in non-sales selling. So you're actually not necessarily face-to-face with folks, but you are actually, in many walks of your life or in many parts of your life, you're actually doing some convincing others that may not necessarily involve a purchase. So one of the things you want to think about is the fact that, anytime you're trying to get somebody to adopt your point of view, to go from point A to point B, or to see things your way, you do this early on as a child. You try to get your parents to say, yeah, get me this, buy me this. So you're trying to get them to see your point of view on why they should buy you something. So you're in many parts of your life, you're convincing folks to try to do things or to see things your way. Knowledge workers add value to information and are focused on creating, using, and sharing and applying knowledge. And so one of the things about that is, let me get caught up on my slides here, is the notion that personal selling skills are going to contribute in a number of ways to 4 different types of knowledge workers. So again, many of you will go into, if not most of you, will go into careers that will involve knowledge work, maybe as high as 80 or 90%. And so selling skills work very closely with managerial personnel, other professionals. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're salesperson number 1. And so you're going to need to convince not only people to buy your product or service, but you're going to need to convince investors to work with you. You're going to need to convince employees to work with you. So there's a lot of selling involved with being an entrepreneur. And with marketing personnel is another area. When you learn to sell, you're going to do that through a variety of different channels. So you could join up with a company and learn to sell with a company, and they'll train you through a corporate sponsored training program. And that's fairly typical in the business. You may also be trained by commercial vendors. You may get that as part of your career at a company, or you may also choose to do that independently. So in the real estate business that I'm involved in now, many agents will actually go out and get their own training and coaching from a commercial vendor. There are also different types of certification programs. There's an example one here on the screen, actually. I'll catch up the screen. CMR Institute, which actually talks about the fact that when you're working with certain types of salespeople, you expect a certain level of expertise. That's a good example in the real estate business is commercial real estate agents. There's a certification program called CCIM, and folks that want to work with commercial, really dedicated commercial agents will look for that designation or certification before they'll work with that particular type of individual. There are also college and university courses that are out there. This course isn't designed to make you a salesperson. It is designed to introduce you to personal selling and get you thinking along the lines of a sales presentation and maybe enlighten you on or introduce you to the opportunity or the thought that maybe a sales career might be for you. So in review of Chapter 1, we've defined personal selling and described the prescriptions of a personal selling philosophy. We've described the emergence of relationship selling in the age of information and the rewarding aspects of a career in selling today. And that's the end of Chapter 1.